Hello, Dr. Camacho here. So this week, obviously, we are reviewing phenomenology, a qualitative approach that is personally special to me because this is the one that I chose, and I felt it pertinent to share with you the reason why I chose it. So my dissertation initially was born out of my personal experience. So there was a lot of bracketing and positionality that I had to manage, and I will explain why. I'm a first generation college student, Latino college student, and was blessed with the opportunity to obtain an education of higher learning. Currently in America, Latinos are the number one population enrolling in institutions of higher learning with a little bit over 80%. However, the graduation rates are far, far lower than that, with a little bit over 30%. And that's an issue. That's a phenomenon that many past researchers have looked into, particularly in the regions of the United States on the West Coast, Southwest, and the Southeast, and some in the Midwest as well. There was a void on research in the Northeast region. So I focused my research on, why students who are of Latino cultural backgrounds and are enrolling in universities across America, why are they dropping out, essentially? What affects the decisions for them to contemplate dropping out of college, and thus contributing to this huge disparity from over 80% enrollment to 30%, around 30% graduation rate. That problem needs to be solved for several reasons. This topic has gained a lot of attention lately from senior administrators because of enrollment numbers. Obviously, it's a great effect there. There are fiscal implications as well. And just for society at large, our social capital, it's not a good thing when one of the largest populations in America, per the census now, Latinos are, the number one population in America, and period. We are now the number one population also enrolling in college universities, but we're not graduating. And for social capital, and that's not a good thing because we need to make sure that these young men and women go on to earn their educations of higher learning and contribute to society at large in a positive way. So my research question ended up being, what are the lived experiences and decision considerations of Latinos, particularly Latinos who are affiliated with Greek-lettered organizations who contemplated dropping out of college. So the final question was, what are the lived experiences and decision considerations of Latinos in Latino Greek-lettered organizations who contemplated dropping out of college? Now you might ask, why students who affiliated with Greek-lettered organizations? Well, because Latino Greek-lettered organizations have contributed to their retention and their development. So if these students whom have found a home on campuses within these organizations are still dropping out, then that adds to the problem. Or maybe, shed light on a different perspective of the problem. So that was my research question, and phenomenology was a natural choice because my goal was there's research out there, past research done by colleagues who I happen to know, mentors of mine in the field, research that has been done in the regions that I mentioned earlier, the West Coast, Southwest, Southeast, and Midwest. Those practitioners are still around, and I've had conversations with them throughout my graduate coursework at Columbia University, what have you. And the past research was similar to mine, just that the regions were different. I added the piece of the Northeast, where there are a lot very prominent and well-renowned institutions in the Northeast. So I wanted to add that piece of the puzzle. And the past research investigated the lived experiences of several of these students, Latino students, and from different backgrounds within the subgroup of Latinos. Many of them first-generation college students. So phenomenology, obviously the study of the lived experiences of a group of people and attempting to find similarities to try to determine if there are any similarities with the past research, any similarities amongst the participants of my research, to see if there are any commonalities or any different factors to why these students contemplate or ultimately do end up dropping out of college or university. So specifically on the phenomenology, I chose the transcendental approach, because that, was pretty much in line with, getting my participants, and I used propulsive sampling to get my participants because it was a specific, a group of people that I was looking to sample. Getting those experiences and getting the transcripts and comparing and contrasting in hopes of finding similarities was pertinent. So as I mentioned earlier, this was dear to my heart because I'm a first generation Latino college student. So one of the biggest challenges for me going into the research, and one thing that I acknowledged very, very early on, and my advisors and were very clear on that, and something that I really had to actively work towards, is to make sure that I bracketed accordingly. There was a lot of bracketing. I had to manage my positionality because I'm a member of the subgroup, particularly with the experience that I'm studying. So I needed to make sure that I managed all of that so that my bias didn't affect my research and ultimately in explaining my findings. And that was honestly, that was one of the best experiences, part of the experience, because even though I was a part of the subgroup, the challenge of me removing myself from the group and studying from an objective perspective as much as possible was fascinating to me. And while I did go through the data collection and data analysis, I definitely saw the connection there personally through my own experiences. But at the same time, as a researcher, I needed to make sure that I, kept in line with being being objective as much as possible, to make sure that my research ultimately came up and valid, and I produced some very, very significant research that could be used out there, and again be a piece of the puzzle of past research that I had seen from my colleagues and mentors. And as a result, I've begun working with those colleagues and mentors on, now that we have research that brings the puzzle together nationwide on this phenomenon, and senior admin are paying more attention to this phenomenon because of enrollment numbers and financial implications and what have you. I've become working with those mentors and even my advisor to produce more periodicals and journals and speaking engagements out there, both at the local and national level, to help this phenomenon be addressed. And even there's work being done on Capitol Hill to address this issue. So the federal government has also gotten involved on several initiatives to close that gap between the low 80% and low 30 percentile of enrollment to graduation rates. So this is not something that I per se have discovered on my own. This is something that's getting federal attention now. So having said that, the textural and structural, was important for me. The context and the settings were very, very significant in the findings, because, ultimately I did find that, my findings in 2014, which is when I defended my dissertation, matched those of, a lot of the factors and that, contributed to the contemplation and ultimate decision to drop out of college for these students, for my sampling, matched those of the past research very, very closely. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because some of the past research goes back to the 80s and 90s. So that means that, higher ed has not been able to solve these issues for decades, a few decades now. And that we need to try to reverse that trend. So it was a fascinating experience overall. Unfortunately, it did match past research, and these factors have been going on for a few decades now. But the positive note is that it is gaining a lot of attention across the country, both on the campuses and by federal government. So hopefully, with research such as mine and my colleagues, and I'm sure others that will be produced down the road, this phenomenon can continue to be tackled and hopefully addressed, slowly but surely. So that's a little bit of why I chose phenomenology and why I went in the direction of transcendental phenomenology, because, it was very important that I studied the lived experiences of several individuals to study a phenomenon within my region that ultimately became a piece of the puzzle of a phenomenon that's happening, across America and is gaining attention. good luck and enjoy this week's lecture, because phenomenology is a fun one, as they all are. And I'm sure that as you go through all the approaches, you'll start seeing maybe where your interest may fit in one of these. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.